I'll be reading this morning from 1 Corinthians chapter 9, verses 24 through 26. Do you not know that those who run in a race all run, but only one receives the prize? Run in such a way that you may win. Everyone who competes in the games exercises self-control in all things. They then do it to receive a perishable wreath, but we an imperishable. Therefore I run in such a way as not without aim. I box in such a way as not beating the air.
Well, so now that Sarah and all the girls are here, I want to take this opportunity to thank you so much again for everything you did for us, all the prayers and the food and the diapers. We're using them all, and we really are very, very grateful. I got to tell this with you. I didn't tell Sarah I was going to tell you guys this, but when we were getting ready to leave for the hospital, I can tell you the longer version later, but we were getting ready to go meet Judy, and so we were getting ready for the hospital, and Sarah's mom had come down to take care of Ippy and Nancy. And so we were, Sarah was kind of going over things, with her and saying, here's this, here's that. And she, at one point, I don't know if Sarah remembers this, but I thought it was pretty significant. She turned to her mom and said, if you need anything, just call. And she held up the Miller Street directory. She says, anybody. So it really is it's a great example of how blessed we are. God has blessed our family, and he's done a lot of it through you. And so thank you very, very much. I don't know if you know, today is a very important day for more than one reason. One reason is it's Shelby's birthday, and she loves attention. And so if you want to mention happy birthday to her before she leaves, and since my life has just been shortened for saying that, you might say goodbye to me too. But plus today is important because if you want to do anything in 2019, you have 23 days left to do it. If you had 2019 plans, you got 23 days. And then that's it. 2019 is almost done. And I hope it was a good year for you. I imagine there were some things that went well and some things that were rough. But as far as I can tell, 2020 is going to happen. And there might be some things you want to change. I've mentioned this more than once that we got our New Year's resolutions, but I think we need to go past that. And that's why I'm kind of talking about this now. I think it's good to talk about it now because we got 23 days at least to think about it instead of waiting till the night before. And of course, you don't have to wait for New Year's resolutions. There's always opportunities to change. But you need to know things in the year 2020 are not going to be different. Things are not going to get better. It's going to be more of the same or even worse unless you and I make a real decision. You know how we are. Just letting things ride with some kind of vague hope doesn't accomplish anything. And like I was saying last week, it's a matter of taking back control of your life. You have to take a close look at your routines. I always do this. When it's this time, this happens, then I do that. And they're not necessarily wrong, but it can end up where you're not even living your life anymore. And so it's important to take a close look at your routines and make sure that you're running your life and not just your habits, and make some real decisions. It's easy to make goals. I do it all the time. The hard part is following through on it. But it's also very important to make goals that will please God. So set big goals, things that are out of reach. We talked about that before too. When a goal is out of your reach, you're going to do something that's really, really smart. When it's something that you can't do quite on your own, you're going to have to rely on God, and that's a really good move. And something else that'll happen, if you make a goal that's kind of out of your reach, you're going to have to change in order to accomplish it, and that's a good move too. If you and I set some goals and then make some real efforts, I think 2020 could be exciting. It's a nice round number for whatever that's worth. Some people are going to grab that and say, then the world's probably going to end. It just sounds smooth, and so they'll grab 2020 as a good time for the world to end. But wouldn't it be great if it was when the world began for you? If it really kind of took off and you were able to look back on the year 2020, says, I remember it well, not just because it was a round number, but I don't know, a lot of things changed for me. I was able to kind of, I still got stuff to work on, but 2020 was a good year. So I have some suggestions, 23 days before the fact, about 2020 and something that would probably help all of us. And if this does not apply to you, you are one of the few exceptions. But one thing that's notorious about us in the 21st century in the United States in particular, we have too much going on. We own too many things. We're involved in too many things. One guy describes us as pancake people. We're spread way too thin. Recently, some of my family got to go to Disneyland. I was thinking about that, and what if they came back, and let's say you talked to them, say you went to Disneyland, and they said, yeah, and I said, well, how was it? I said, well, wasn't that fun, actually? And you'd probably pursue it further and say, well, what was wrong with it? Why didn't you have fun? I said, well, we didn't go in, we just kind of drove by it, but we went to Disneyland, but it just wasn't that fun. And you would have to say, I think I know what the problem is. You have to take the time to go inside. But we do this with almost everything in our life, whether it's a whole day or certain things that we consider important. We're not going inside, we're just skimming the surface. We're just drive-by enjoying things. And then we wonder why there's something missing. We're moving so fast from one thing to the next, and there's no real time to enjoy any of it. And that includes our family, our friends, our relationship with God. And I know if we all sat down right now and made a list, those would be the important things: family and friends and God. But you know what happens. These all end up being things we have to squeeze in. And the important things get lost in the commotion. I read about a woman who was driving her son to, I think it was a music lesson or something, piano lessons and maybe guitar lessons. And he had also had soccer practice that week, and there was homework. And like a lot of kids, they have one thing after another. And she looked in the rearview mirror and had this kind of startling realization. She looked in the rearview mirror, and he was asleep. He's just exhausted by going from one thing to the next. And she finally realized, all I'm doing is training my son to have a frantic life, rushing from one thing to the next. And so she decided that they would sit down together with his dad and try to figure out how to smooth things out and make them slow down a little bit. We know what's important in life. We just convince ourselves that we'll get to these important things later. And then later becomes later. Here's Luke 12:16. This is a parable that Jesus told some people that day, and as always, it's very relevant to our situation. It's Luke 12:16. It's not his most famous parable. A lot of people grab other parables, but this is here for a reason. Luke 12:16, and he told them a parable, saying, the land of a rich man was very productive. And he began reasoning to himself, saying, what shall I do since I have no place to store my crops? Then he said, this is what I will do. I will tear down my barns and build larger ones, and there I will store all my grain and my goods. And I will say to my soul, soul, you have many goods laid up for many years to come. Take your ease, eat, drink, and be merry. But God said to him, you fool, this very night your soul is required of you. And now who will own what you have prepared? So is the man who stores up treasure for himself and is not rich toward God. And part of this, there's so much going on in this parable, but part of it is he's saying, don't count on the fact that you have plenty of time. Planning on better days ahead is a mistake. It's important to make today better. I fall into that trap and say, yeah, if I can just get this done, get ahead, and then on down the line things will be better. Make it better now. Better days don't have to be ahead. Better days can happen right now. I heard a guy talking about his life and talking about how he spent his time and was kind of thinking about it. This is a guy in the world, by the way, where he's just kind of thinking about life and how time kind of gets away from you. And he ended up putting a door on his sign. It's the door to his office. And it's a sign with 4 numbers on it, 1440. And that's the number of minutes in a day, 1,440. That's how many minutes everybody has every day. And when people would interrupt him, and he's working, and when people interrupt him and they come and say, have you got a minute? He considers that question. He thinks about it. He really thinks about it. Because a lot of times the interruption is not important, or they end up getting sidetracked by some kind of distracting conversation that doesn't have any significance, or it's something that could be handled later or differently. And I think we should all people, Christians should consider this number. Every day you have 1,440 minutes. And we don't really think about it, about those minutes. I wonder if it would help if you carried around $1,440. Probably not a good idea, but if you had that in ones, you had to get extra pockets, but you'd have these ones, and every minute that went by, you had to give up $1. I think you'd feel it more how you're spending your time. Just sleeping, getting up, going to bed, all that stuff, you're already down to about 1,000 minutes. And then all the other everyday things that don't matter but you still got to do, take a shower, brush your teeth, get dressed, eat food. Pretty soon, there's not much time left for any real decisions. And on top of that, there's tons of distractions. All of us have stuff that, end up being distractions. And downtime is nice, but mostly it's mindless and doesn't add anything significant to life, or at least anything that'll help you become a better you. And these distractions are not a big deal until you realize how much of the 1,440 they use up. And I think this is where it hits me. It's startling to realize how easy it is to waste your life a piece at a time. In tiny, tiny pieces, 1 minute at a time. So, as we get closer to 2020, it might help to take a step back and reevaluate your minutes. Not let them slip through your fingers like we tend to do. To really take a conscious look at them and realize how valuable they are. You can always get more dollars. I know that doesn't come easily, but you can get more dollars. You never get minutes back. Once you spend those, they're gone forever. Here's Psalm 39:4. In fact, this is part of our daily Bible reading this week. I bet you've read it. It's Psalm 39, verse 4. David is kind of asking God to give him some perspective on things, and here's how he puts it. Lord, make me to know my end and what is the extent of my days. Let me know how transient I am, how temporary this is. Behold, you have made my days as a hand's breadth, just the width of a hand, and my lifetime as nothing in your sight. Surely every man at his best is a mere breath. Surely every man walks about as a phantom. Surely they make an uproar for nothing. He amasses riches and does not know who will gather them. So he's saying, I want to do better, realizing that I have a limited amount of time. So I heard some great advice once, and it's about how to make your life better. And like a lot of great advice, you're not going to like it, because I didn't. But if you do this, the year 2020 is going to be so much better. So here's the advice I heard. You need to start saying no. I was talking to a good friend about this yesterday, how you can't do everything. There's just got to come a time where you say no. Because if you say yes to too many things, it's just going to be no anyway. It's just going to be a lot more of a commotion about it. Because you won't be able to do well at any of the things. Saying yes to fewer things helps you accomplish more. For a long time, this is for years and years when I was growing up, I thought that every time I had a choice in front of me, like a fork in the road, I always thought that means there's a right and a wrong choice. And that does sometimes come into play. But I thought it was always between right and wrong. And it really helped me when somebody pointed out that's not the case, not necessarily. Many times the choice will be between right and right. They're both okay. Both choices are fine, and neither is a mistake. And God will bless you whichever choice you make. But when we are confronted with the choice between right and right, there is one possible mistake you can make, and that's to choose both. Possibly a mistake. For our enemy to damage us, and that's what his goal is, he doesn't have to necessarily get us to do bad stuff. A lot of damage is just getting us to not do good stuff. And one of the best tactics is to stuff our lives and keep us moving fast, where we're not really doing anything, spreading ourselves thin. We overlook the good things, or we just don't make time for them and say, yeah, better days ahead. One of these days. Plus, when you're moving too fast, I think this is true of me, it's easier to make a wrong decision when you're moving fast. Or we're so busy, our thinking becomes stagnant, and it's just about getting through the day. I've had those, many of those. And we spend our 1440 on mindless escapes. So it's kind of simple math. If you're spread too thin and you're doing too much to the point you're not doing anything significant, if you want to be able to focus, if you want to actually go inside Disneyland, you're going to have to get rid of some stuff. One thing that'll help is really streamlining things, and that's not easy, I forgot to mention this. I heard one thing to do is, instead of looking for it for yourself, is find somebody who cares about you and ask them. And be ready for answers that you don't necessarily want to hear. What can I do? What do I need to maybe get rid of or tone down a little bit so I can focus better? Well, one reason life stops being enjoyable is we don't have goals and we don't focus. And this is why I asked James to read 1 Corinthians 9:24. Paul makes a sports analogy. It's really effective in 1 Corinthians 9:24. It ties in with what we're talking about. Do you not know that those who run in a race all run, but only one receives the prize? Run in such a way that you may win. Everyone who competes in the games exercises self-control in all things. They then do it to receive a perishable wreath, but we an imperishable. Therefore, run in such a way as not without aim. I box in such a way as not beating the air. It's a great analogy. So if you're in a race and the gun goes off, it's very important to run, but it's also very important to run in a specific direction. But we're a lot like people, he says run not without aim, but we're like in a race, we're trying to do shot put and gymnastics and pole vaulting all at the same time during the race. And no wonder things don't go well and the fun is gone. It's exhausting. And you end up not winning anything. Or the boxing metaphor, he says, I'm not punching the air, I'm trying to connect. My goal is to connect. Or I like how one guy put it, he said, I'm not playing air guitar. Look at me, I'm living life. I'm playing guitar. No, it looks cool, but you're not really playing guitar. It's not real. All of us have a lot of interest. That does not mean you can't have variety in your life. I know you understand what I'm talking about, but focus will make your life effective. There's an old saying, and like a lot of old sayings, it's been edited over the years, and we only remember part of it. But sometimes when somebody's good at a lot of stuff, they'll say, oh yeah, he's a jack of all trades, but some of you know the rest. Yeah, it's important to remember the rest. Jack of all trades, master of none. Whenever I meet somebody from another country, I just, for fun, I ask them to teach me a phrase from their language, not anything boring like, where's directions or anything like that, Can you help me get to the store? I always ask them to teach something kind of odd. I know a bunch of phrases from a bunch of languages, but I can only speak one. I'm not good at it, at that one, frankly. But dabbling in a little bit here and there, it really doesn't accomplish much. It's more of just trivial stuff. Focus keeps you from wasting your time and your money and your energy to really get up every day and say, okay, I'm going to streamline things. What can I really focus on? And does it really matter? I'm really looking forward to playing in the snow with my daughters, and it's just inevitable. We're going to build a snowman. It's just, they're singing about it all the time. So we built some snowmen, and we'll probably build a fort and maybe an igloo. And later, if one of my daughters comes up and starts crying because things are melting, I'm going to have to explain, say, go ahead, do stuff with snow, but don't base your happiness on it. It's all going to melt. Some people do make the decision to streamline their life and they start focusing their efforts, but then they make the biggest mistake of all and they invest in all their effort and stuff that's going to melt. The greatest thing you can do with your life is spend it involved in things that will outlast your life. Here's 1 Peter 1:24. So we need to look for things that don't melt. Here's just a couple of quick examples. You need to look for things that are eternal. Here's one of them, 1 Peter 1:24. It all leads back to something that I know a lot of us are doing, but it's just so very important. 1 Peter 1:24. All flesh is like grass, and all its glory like the flower of grass. The grass withers, and the flower falls off, but the word of the Lord endures forever. And this is the word which was preached to you. Everything we're talking about, saying that I don't have time to read the Bible sounds pretty silly. I don't have time to read my Bible. I'm busy building snow forts. 2 Corinthians 4:18. Again, a similar idea. While we look not at the things which are seen, but at the things which are not seen. For the things which are seen are temporal. They're temporary. But the things which are not seen are eternal. That's tough to really focus on the things that last. There are things that don't matter, and there are things that are incredibly important. There's nothing wrong with playing in the snow. Just don't build your life out of it. So I'm excited about 2020. I've been looking at things in my life, and I'm determined to have some goals. And I think one goal is to make sure you don't have too many goals. I think that's the key. The other is to make sure I spend more time on the things that matter. And I really believe that with some focus and some faith, it's going to be a great year. I really hope that's how it is for you. I appreciate your attention, and I appreciate your sacrifice. You just gave me 20 of your minutes. And since we only get 1,440 of those a day, they're very valuable. So let me encourage you to make the most of them. Hope you think about it. We stand together and sing.